Are we just, passengers on the train of history? Or are we actually driving it?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Do the great men and great women, do they really change things, or are they just symbols of something deeper, something inevitable?
Hmm.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Mm.
Today we're going to get right into that whole question. We're using a really key essay from 1898 by George Plekhanov.
The role of the individual in history, a
Yeah.
classic.
Right. And we'll also bring in some historical perspective from Tony Cliff.
Yeah.
Basically, our mission here is to unpack Plekhanov's view, which is pretty nuanced on individual action versus, historical fate.
It's about getting a clearer picture of how history actually unfolds. It often feels like a contradiction, doesn't it? Agency versus determinism.
Absolutely.
But Plekhanov offers this really sophisticated way to look at it. It still feels relevant. He helps us see they're not really opposites, more like two sides of the same coin.
So when Plekhanov first started writing this, he was stepping into a pretty fiery debate.
Oh, definitely.
His whole philosophy, Marxism, was getting slammed as like fatalistic. Like it was saying individuals just don't count, that history just happened.
Exactly. Driven by these big impersonal forces. And yeah, that sounds pretty disempowering if you think about it.
Who was pushing back the hardest?
Well, in Russia, his main opponents were the Narodniks, the Populists. They had this totally different idea, the theory of heroes and the mob.
Heroes and the mob. Okay, what does that mean?
They really believed that history only moved forward because of these special heroes. Critically thinking individuals with big ideas, acting on their own visions, their own fantasies almost.
So what about everyone else? The ordinary people?
To the Narodniks, they were just an inert force, a mob. They only mattered if a hero came along to lead them.
Wow. So kind of passive.
Very passive. And this thinking led them down certain paths, like focusing on individual terrorism instead of, say, organizing the masses for a revolution. Why bother with the mob if only heroes matter, right?
But Plekhanov came back strong on this. He wasn't saying individuals are irrelevant.
Not at all. Quite the opposite. He argued, look, history is made by people, and the actions of individuals, especially prominent ones, are incredibly significant.
So how did he define a great man then? What made someone great in his view?
It's fascinating, actually. For him, a great man isn't just about personal talent in a vacuum. He said they possess qualities that make them most capable of serving the great social needs of his time.
Social needs. So needs coming from the broader society.
Exactly. Needs arising from general historical forces, particular situations. He liked Carlyle's description, two great men as beginners, someone who sees further than others and desires things more strongly than others.
But it wasn't just about seeing further, was it? There was more to it.
Absolutely crucial point. Their strength wasn't just internal. It comes from his contact with a class, with the masses, with the people. It's about being able to organize, to understand where history is heading.
So without that connection?
Without that connection to the social currents, their role shrinks to almost nothing, no matter how brilliant they might seem on their own.
Okay, this is where I still get a bit tangled. If individuals matter and their actions are significant, how does that square with history following laws, expressing necessity? Doesn't that contradict?
It feels like it, but Plekhanov argued, no, it doesn't have to. He said the materialist view of, the idea that our choices are shaped by circumstances is actually quite compatible with the most vigorous practical activity.
Really? How does that work?
Well, look at history. Here's the surprising thing. Even outright fatalism, believing everything is predetermined, hasn't always stopped people from acting decisively.
That seems backwards. If it's all fated, why bother?
Right. But think about the Puritans in 17th century England, or the early followers of Muhammad. They were huge believers in predestination.
Yeah.
Yet they acted with immense energy, conquered territories. Plekhanov brings up Luther, here I stand, I can do no other. That conviction that your actions are part of this inevitable chain, it can give you incredible resolve.
Unlike someone like Hamlet, maybe. All that indecision.
Exactly. Hamlet lacked that certainty, that feeling of necessity driving him. He could only reflect and hesitate.
So freedom, in this view, isn't just being free from things, like no constraints.
It's deeper than that for Plekhanov. He has this amazing phrase, freedom is merely necessity transformed into mind, or simply put, being conscious of necessity.
Conscious of necessity.
Yeah.
Meaning you understand the forces at play.
Precisely. True freedom isn't pretending the rules don't exist. It's understanding the underlying necessity, the historical currents, so well that your actions become aligned with them. You're not fighting the tide, you're using it.
That's a big shift from just thinking freedom means fewer rules.
It is. He contrasts it with narrower views, like Zimmel's, which just saw freedom as freedom from external restraint. For Plekhanov, if you drop that mind-reality split, adopt a monist view, necessity and freedom actually merge. Think of the Russian Marxists he knew. Their intense desire to act, their passion, they saw it as the conscious expression of historical necessity, freedom growing out of necessity. And this understanding, he felt, freed them from internal conflict, from those mental tortures.
Okay, that's a really powerful philosophical point.
Yeah.
But let's bring it down to earth a bit. What about the actual impact? My specific choices. If something's necessary, does it matter if I act or not?
Absolutely it matters, and Plekhanov uses this almost mathematical analogy, his arithmetic, to show why.
Arithmetic. Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, imagine a historical event. Let's call it A. It will happen if a certain set of circumstances, S, are present. Now, your action, A, is part of that set, S.
Right, my contribution is in the mix.
Exactly. So what happens if you decide to just, fold your arms and do nothing?
The circumstances change.
Right. The sum becomes S minus A. Your inaction changes the whole calculation. Maybe A still happens, but later, or less completely. Or maybe your A was crucial and it doesn't happen quite the same way or even at all.
Oh, okay. So my action or inaction is a real variable.
Totally. He even jokes about it, saying arithmetic is a very respectable and useful science, particularly for philosophers to remember your choices are part of the historical math.
So believing something's inevitable shouldn't make you passive, unless, as he says, you're morally flabby.
Exactly. Your conviction can fuel action. Now, interestingly, if you oppose something inevitable, knowing it's inevitable might sap your energy, or it could turn into what he calls a vigor of despair. You fight even harder, maybe, because you know the odds. It's complex.
This whole tension really shows up in how historians themselves have thought about this stuff, doesn't it? Feels like the focus keeps shifting.
Oh, absolutely. A real pendulum swing. Go back to the 18th century, and the focus was heavily on individuals, their conscious actions, their passions, their moral choices, history as a collection of lessons from great lives.
Like Plutarch, but later.
Sort of, yeah. Thinkers like Montaigne. Then came the French Revolution, a huge shock. And the historians looking back in the early 19th century, Guizot, Meunier, they reacted. They started emphasizing the bigger picture.
Deeper forces.
Right. Social institutions, economic conditions, history as this process with its own hidden necessity. So much so that critics like Chateaubriand accuse them of being fatalistic, of ignoring individuals.
And then later, around Plekhanov's time,
you had some German historians like Karl Lamprecht going even further. He quoted Bismarck, supposedly saying, "We cannot make history, we must wait while it is being made." Basically arguing individuals are kind of powerless.
Wait, Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, the guy famous for his willpower and action, he said that.
I know, right? And Plekhanov jumps on this irony. Bismarck's whole career proves you can see things in terms of necessity and be an incredibly energetic actor on the world stage.
So Bismarck is wrong about himself.
Plekhanov thought his mistake was separating the act of making history from securing its results. Every act of securing, of consolidating, is making history. It's an active process. And others, like the French historian Monod, started talking about big figures as just signs and symbols, like waves on the surface, while the real action is the deep, slow tides of economic and social change underneath. Lamprecht liked that view, too.
But Plekhanov wasn't fully satisfied with this tides view either.
No. He thought it was a step in the right direction, away from pure subjectivism. But he found it vague, not entirely new. Guizot had said similar things decades earlier. And crucially, it swung the pendulum too far again. It risked making the individual just insignificant, a quantité négligeable.
Okay, so this brings us back to those tricky things, the random stuff. Personality quirks, accidents, like Louis XF's affairs, or if a key general gets sick. What about Cleopatra's nose? Can that stuff really change the big picture?
Plekhanov tackles this head on. He admits, yeah, there's a certain amount of truth there. These personal things, Louis XV's character flaws, Mirabeau being ill at a critical moment, a general being indecisive like Berlin was, they do affect the detail.
The individual features of events?
Exactly. The specific way things play out, the particular consequences. Louis XV's personal failings arguably cost France territory, but Turlin's hesitation might well have saved Frederick the Great. These things had real effects.
So, how do we fit these accidents into a history that also follows laws? Are they just random spanners in the works?
Here's Plekhanov's synthesis, and it's quite elegant. He says the effect of these personal factors and accidents depends entirely on the given social conditions.
Can you give an example?
His analogy is brilliant. Louis XV's womanizing mattered because he was king. His personal life had state consequences. If a palace cook had the same weakness, it wouldn't register historically.
Ah, okay. The social position magnifies or minimizes the impact of the personality.
Precisely. The character of an individual is a factor in social development only where, when, and to the extent that social relations permit it to be such. Position and context are everything. An accident, he says it's relative. Accidents often happen at the intersection of inevitable processes. Think of European explorers reaching the Americas. European navigation developing wasn't accidental for Europe, but stumbling upon Mexico and Peru was accidental from the perspective of their internal development.
And the outcome of that accident.
Determined by the interaction of both sides, the resultant of two forces, like the economic state of the conquerors and the conquered. It's not pure chance, it's chance interacting with existing structures.
So individuals matter, accidents happen, but within limits.
Yeah.
They operate inside this larger framework. Can those small things, even added up, fundamentally change the main direction?
Plekhanov argues no. No amount of petty causes or individual quirks can ultimately eliminate the great social needs driving history or change their general trend.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He looks at the French Revolution. Mirabeau died relatively early. Maybe if he'd lived, the constitutional monarchy phase would have lasted longer. But could he have stopped the rise of the Republicans entirely? Plekhanov says no. The underlying forces were too strong. Or Robespierre. If he died sooner or later, it would have changed the timing of his party's fall, but not the eventual outcome, because the social base wasn't there for them to hold power indefinitely.
What about Napoleon? He seems like such a singular figure.
Even Napoleon. Plekhanov argues, look, if Bonaparte had been killed in battle early on, society still desperately needed stability after the revolution. The bourgeoisie needed order consolidated. Another talented general, a good sword, he calls it like Moreau or MacDonald or Bernadotte, would likely have stepped into that role.
So the position wouldn't have stayed empty?
Probably not, Plekhanov says. The need for that role was so strong, the system would likely have produced someone to fill it.
This is where he talks about that optical illusion, right?
Exactly. It's a really sharp observation.
How does it work?
When one person, like Napoleon, steps up and successfully meets a huge social need restoring order, for instance, their very success blocks others who could have done it. We see only the one who made it.
And then we think only they could have done it.
Precisely. We attribute the massive social power that pushed them forward entirely to their unique personal power. We make them seem indispensable, forgetting all the other potential talents waiting in the wings whose paths were blocked.
Like seeing only the winner.
Yeah, like seeing only the winner and thinking they were the only one capable of winning, ignoring everyone else who might have, given slightly different circumstances. So for someone talented to really shape events, Plekhanov says two things need to happen. First, their specific talent has to match the social needs of the given epoch.
Beethoven couldn't become emperor just by writing great music.
Exactly. Second, the existing social order has to allow them to rise. It can't bar their way.
That makes me think of the French Revolution again.
Yes. Think about the generals who emerged then. Many came from really humble backgrounds, dyers, barbers, actors. Their talent was probably always there.
But the old system kept them down.
Right. The revolution broke down those barriers, and suddenly, talent could rise from anywhere. It shows how social conditions can unleash potential.
So individuals aren't creating the big historical trends out of thin air.
No, they are often the product of this trend themselves. They become its best representatives, they give it conscious expression, they help push it forward.
And if one representative falls, another might rise.
If the trend is deep enough, yes. Its depth determines its power to generate new talent when needed.
Wow. Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the final synthesis? Plekhanov's giving us a really complex, layered picture here.
He really is. He boils it down like this. The ultimate, final, and most general cause driving history is the development of productive forces, technology, economy, that shapes social relations.
That's the base level.
Right. Then you have particular causes, the specific historical situation of a country, its interactions with neighbors, its unique path.
And finally,
you have individual causes, personal qualities, those accidents we talked about, individual choices. These determine the individual features, the specific color and texture of events.
But they can't override the bigger forces.
Exactly. The individual causes can't fundamentally change the operation of the general and particular causes. Those larger forces determine the trend and limits of the influence of individual causes. So, a great man isn't great just because his personality leaves a unique mark. He's great because he has the qualities needed to serve the great social needs of his time. His actions become the conscious and free expression of that inevitable, underlying historical course.
Conscious and free expression of the inevitable. That's the core.
That's where his colossal significance and terrible power come from. He understands and acts upon the necessity.
So making history isn't about imposing your will against the current. It's more like understanding the current and steering effectively within it.
Beautifully put, yes. Knowing the direction allows you to influence how people think, and therefore influence events. Great individuals aren't just passive symbols, they're active agents who help solve the problems history throws up, especially when economic changes demand new institutions.
And he broadens the idea of greatness too, right?
He does. He reminds us it's relative and quotes the Bible, suggesting greatness lies in selfless action. Every man is great who lays down his life for his friend.
Beyond the philosophy, let's talk about Plekhanov himself. Tony Cliff calls him the father of Russian Marxism. What was his actual historical impact?
Yeah, Tony Cliff's assessment is spot on. George Plekhanov, born 1856, was absolutely foundational for Marxism in Russia, a true precursor of the Russian workers' movement.
What was the scene like when he started?
Dominated by the Populists, the Narodniks, they were anti-Tsarist, sure, but pinned their hopes on the peasants and the mir, that old communal land system. They thought Russia could skip capitalism altogether and jump straight to socialism via the countryside, and their main tactic was often individual terrorism.
But Plekhanov saw things differently.
He had a crucial shift in thinking. He observed capitalism was developing in Russia, the mir was actually breaking down, and critically, a new industrial working class was emerging in the cities.
When did he really grasp the significance of the workers?
The big moment seems to be around 1878-79, during some major workers' strikes. He realized the concentrated power of these urban workers was potentially much more decisive than the scattered peasantry.
And this led to his major writings.
Yes. His 1883 work, Socialism and the Political Struggle, and then Our Differences in 1884, these just demolish the populist arguments. They effectively Russified Marxism, adapting it to Russian conditions. Lenin later said socialism and the political struggle was as important for Russia as the Communist Manifesto was for the world.
A huge claim.
It shows the impact. By 1889, Plekhanov was confidently telling the Socialist International, the Russian Revolution can only conquer as a working man's revolution. There is no other possibility. That vision directly led his followers to form the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party in 1898.
What was his view on the peasants then, if not the main revolutionary force?
This was controversial, but also quite insightful in hindsight. He saw them as political antipodes to the workers, fundamentally conservative, tied to private property, potentially a bulwark of Oriental despotism.
Ouch. Did he underestimate them?
Tony Cliff argues he probably did underestimate their initial revolutionary energy against the Tsar. But, Cliff adds, Plekhanov also sort of predicted their later conservative role under Stalinism. It was prescient in a way.
A warning about revolutions in certain conditions.
You could say that. Plekhanov explicitly warned about trying to build socialism in a backward country before the material conditions, wealth, technology, abundance, were ready for real equality.
What did he think would happen?
He feared it would lead to just an equality of poverty and ignorance, or worse, a kind of Peruvian tutelage, a ruling socialist caste lording it over everyone else. That was precisely the problem Lenin and Trotsky faced later, hoping international revolution would solve it.
But Plekhanov himself had a complicated political end.
He did. It's often called his tragedy. He ended up compromising with liberals, opposing Lenin and the Bolsheviks, even supporting Russia in World War I. Cliff suggests this might partly stem from his long exile, his lack of direct day-to-day experience with the working class in action.
Still, his early theoretical work stands.
Immensely so. His foundational writings laid the groundwork. The motto of Iskra, the journal he helped found, was, "The spark lights the fire." And he certainly provided a crucial spark.
So, wrapping up our deep dives today, we've explored Plekhanov's really quite brilliant synthesis. History isn't just big forces, and it isn't just individuals. It's this dynamic interplay. General economic trends, specific historical contexts, and the actions of individuals all interacting.
And a truly great individual, in his view, is someone whose conscious will connects with, expresses, and even speeds up those underlying historical needs. They understand the necessity and act on it.
Plekhanov really pushes us past those simple extremes, doesn't he? Heroes making history versus history as fate.
He does. And he suggests that understanding historical necessity shouldn't paralyze you. Actually, can be empowering. It can unleash energy when you know you're acting in line with deeper trends.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Plekhanov's ideas invite us to look at our own world. What are the great social needs you see around you right now? And thinking about his framework, how might your own conscious, informed actions become one of those inevitable links shaping what comes next, rather than just, reacting to events as they happen?
Makes you think, doesn't it? How understanding the currents might help us navigate them more effectively.